Let's look at the political calendar. We are now less than a year out from Election Day, and the Iowa caucuses just 52 days away. Of course, that officially kicks off the Democratic race. Joe Biden, he's actually on the uptick here. He's surging in Iowa, that according to a brand new poll, leading Bernie Sanders by 1 point, Pete Buttigieg trailing Sanders by 5 points, Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar rounding out the top 5. Biden, he also continues to lead the national polls by a comfortable margin. But many Democrats are far from comfortable, particularly about where things stand with the party. The Times, they traveled the country speaking with voters, and they found that there's a palpable sense of anxiety about the size of the field, a fear that voters will not rally at the end of the day around one single candidate. It also concerns that a good economy could be bad news for Democrats. There's also a fear of politics itself. Several studies have shown that people are turned off by both parties, and that could drive down voter turnout, likely hurting Dems the most here in their efforts to take the White House. Here to discuss all things 2020, Paul Steinhauser. Paul, a national political reporter based in New Hampshire. He's also the former political editor at CNN. Always good talking to you, Paul. Thanks.
Great to join you.
In terms of impeachment, I may be an outlier here, but I think all these fears as to where the polls are moving one way or the other, if at the end of the day it's resolved, let's assume it passes the House as we all do, and then it stalls in the Senate and there's not a conviction at the trial phase, between January and November, a million things will happen in this political climate. And I don't know how anyone can say one way or the other how it goes, the trial will go, the election. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree. And if you look at most national polling on the issue, most people have already made up their minds on Donald Trump. About a third of the country, they believe that this impeachment is a farce and fake news, and they're firmly behind Donald Trump. About a third believe Donald Trump needs to go, and about a third, and that's the most important part, the third that are kind of in the middle. One thing this will help Donald Trump with, though, because we believe, of course, that the Senate will not convict to remove the president from office, and that'll allow the president to say, starting probably in late January when that trial is over, that he's been exonerated. But you're right. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen between the end of that trial at the beginning of the year and Election Day next November.
And to that end, Paul, for folks who are not fans of the president, and as the Times articulated in that piece with that palpable sense of fear as, oh my God, he could get 4 more years, he very well might. But I don't buy the concept that people are so turned off by everything they're going to stay home. I bet good money that the turnout, one way or the other, but the turnout overall in 2020 will be through the roof here. I mean, everybody's invested, given how much we've all basically gone through in the last 3+ years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we'll start to see that come early February when the Iowa caucuses are held, and then especially the primary in New Hampshire, which is a true election. I think you're going to see high turnout in those Democratic primaries because Democratic voters are extremely energized, and they want to get this guy, Donald Trump, the president, out of the White House. On the flip side, impeachment only fuels the fire for Trump's base, for the president's base, and I think they'll be energized as well. So, yeah, you're right. With high turnout, we saw it in the 2018 midterm elections, and I think we're definitely going to see it in November of next year.
You and I spoke about this, and I know we're in agreement. A lot of people were critical when Biden was seen as too aggressive with that voter in Iowa who went after the guy, challenged him to a push-up contest and the rest. I said, you're missing it. That's what, in this reality TV age we live in, people want that stuff. They want these clips, and I'm not surprised Biden has an uptick, not just from that, but also, taking the fight directly to the president, not trying to be above it, but basically to wallow in it with him. I think there's a real appetite for that, and I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, that's probably what's reflected in these numbers that have been pretty good for him.
Yeah, what's the most important thing for Democratic voters, and I talk to them all the time here on the campaign trail, it's finding a candidate who can beat Donald Trump and get him out of the White House. Well, they want a fighter. Joe Biden showed a little bit of that feistiness, something you really haven't seen from Joe Biden on the campaign trail. And I agree with you. I think it was a boon to him. But there was one issue that he needs to resolve. He needs a better answer when it comes to his son, Hunter Biden, and the Ukraine controversy. And he doesn't have that answer yet. Those questions are going to continue to come. He needs to find a better answer.
That's a really good point. Then this next one, and I can't believe I'm talking about Hillary still, but she did that Howard Stern interview. And for folks who aren't even a fan of Howard Stern, I happen to think he's one of the best interviewers out there. She was transparent, she was open, she was all things that she wasn't in 2016. I want to play just a small clip.
I said, look, Donald, I want you to be a good president. I will do whatever I can to help you. So, we're in that period.
Was he gracious or was he a sore winner?
He was so shocked he couldn't, he could barely
form a sentence.
He was as shocked as you.
Right.
He was more shocked than me, I think.
Wow. He was shocked.
Yeah, he was shocked. Bill and I are sitting with George and Laura Bush. And then he started on that speech, which was so bizarre. And then that carnage in the street and the dark dystopian vision. I was sitting there like just, wow, couldn't believe it. George W. Bush says to me, well, that was some weird
Paul, it was funny. I listened to the interview and then I listened more, I think, telling the callers who called after. And they said, I'm a trucker from, Kansas or whatever. I got to tell you, I didn't realize she was a human being. I didn't realize that she had a sense of humor or that, wow, she actually was smart. Now, forget about where have you been, when she was Secretary of State and Senator all those years. Nonetheless, she does not quell the possibility that she certainly still wants it. You can feel that. But, there's a poll out there that she would be the leader in this field. Is this just nice parlor talk here, or is there any thought that this field may not be completely finished even now?
I think it's just parlor talk. I really, it would be the Republicans' dream, and I think Donald Trump's dream, to see Hillary Clinton jump into this race at a very late date. I don't see it happening. I mean, other than a Michael Bloomberg who's got a vast, vast fortune and he's spending it immediately, it's nearly impossible for anybody to run. I will say this, though. She ran a very scripted campaign in 2016, Hillary Clinton, and that came back to bite her in the end. Now, she's definitely unscripted, much freer, much looser. We saw the same thing. I'm old enough to remember, and you may be too, the 1996 election. Bob Dole was the Republican nominee, the longtime senator from Kansas. He was a very stiff candidate. But remember, after the election in the ensuing years, he was doing those Viagra commercials and other things in the media, and was much more loose. So we've seen this before where presidential nominees who didn't win the election kind of cut it up and were much looser after the fact.
And I think, if anything, if anyone pays attention to Trump, the more unscripted, I think the more entertaining it is, as sad as that is a major component, but also people want the genuine article, even if they don't love it. They want something that they believe to be transparent. Paul, always good talking to you. Thanks for the insight.
Always a pleasure. Take care.
All right, we jump to a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up.